Well, hello, Covenant. We're continuing our book study by Andy Stanley. Irresistible by Andy Stanley. We get into chapter 3. And, I'm sorry, not chapter 3. Geez. We get into section 3, the introduction, and then chapter 14 is what I'm going to cover today. And it's going to be a little shorter because I feel like the way Andy sets this up in the introduction is pretty interesting, but between the introduction and chapter 14, he almost sets it up as it has to be either or. And he talks about this idea of vertical morality and how vertical morality can lead to being judgmental and self-absorbed, and it's really about us. You know, we'll say it's about not offending God or avoiding sin, but it's really about us feeling better about ourselves. And the alternative to that at the end of the introduction is horizontal morality. And he writes a little bit and teaches a little bit on the Great Commandment, right? Where Jesus says, love God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then he also teaches a little bit on the story of the Good Samaritan, and that's how he ends it. And so when he talks about this vertical morality, it's almost like he's down on it. He talks about how we almost feel like if we sin, it's an offense to God. And yeah, sin is an offense to God. Whether we become judgmental or self-absorbed because of that or not isn't God's fault, it's ours. That's something we have to work on. And really the solution is loving others the way God tells us to love others. And then he talks a little bit about, going deep, like getting closer to God, and how that can be kind of dangerous too. He says, the holier I got, the more intolerant and judgmental I became. Again, that's something in him. That's not getting closer to God for the sake of the relationship with God. That's getting closer to God to try to, help himself feel better or something. So I hope he brings more clarity to this in the next chapters. Oftentimes Andy, does this kind of thing early on and then clarifies it later on. And so that's what I'm hoping that he is going to do. I love his teaching in chapter 14 on who is our neighbor, and how it was a shift and a change for Jewish people, and how expertly done Jesus does this, and how Jesus came to institute a new ethic, and in this ethic it is about loving people. But think about Jesus' whole purpose and his whole life was honoring God. And when he loved people, he honored God. When we love people well, we honor God. When we worship God and grow closer to God, we become the kind of person that can love others well. Back to that idea of sin as an offense to God. When David sins against Bathsheba in Psalm 51, Psalm 51 is his confession. He says, God, against you and you alone I have sinned. For David, it is vertical morality. And of course, Andy would say that's the Old Testament. But the way that David treated Bathsheba was because he wasn't trusting God. And I think these two things go hand in hand, right? Vertical relationship with God and horizontal relationship with others. When we grow close to God, we become who we need to be in our relationships. So I don't think it's either or. I think it's both and I think even Jesus teaches that. He teaches us to worship God in spirit and in truth, right? So anyway, that's my thoughts on the introduction and chapter 14. We will get into chapter 15. I'm just flipping forward real quick. We'll get into chapter 15 and 16. I think we can do both of those. Yeah. Next week. So I know it's a shorter video, but wanted to get it out there. So thanks for joining. See y'all next week. All right. Bye-bye.